And welcome back into another brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat, the flagship show of the Reality Realm Network. As always, we are your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller,
And my name's Brett Parnell.
and let's dive in. So, episode 4 of
Epi-
Survivor 47.
Episode 4, entitled "Is That Blood in Your Hair?" Could certainly relates to someone, but that we'll talk about. But really, there was a lot of big moments in this episode. I thought it was probably the best episode of the season. What about you,
Oh, it was
Bruce?
great, and the ending caught me off guard, to be honest. So,
All right, so getting into it, let's start with our player of the week. Do you want to go, or do you want me to go first?
I mean, I'm pretty sure we have the same one. For me, it has to be Genevieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the move that she pulled off at the end certainly makes that um an easy pick. There's certainly some other players that are at least in contention and noteworthy, Sue probably being one of them in this episode, but for Genevieve to go from the decoy to pulling out the move that she did and getting 6 confessionals, which is 300% the amount of confessionals that she's got in this whole season up to date, is she's here to
Yeah.
play. And as my first overall pick, I'm pretty excited about this episode.
Yeah. And I will say, I don't, while Sue did find an idol, I don't think this was a great episode for her.
Mm, interesting. All right, so I'm just gonna go. So where should we start when we get back to camp essentially for the beginning? Do you want to maybe take over the first few minutes and I'll comment just because I didn't quite see this while I was just finishing up work, and then I'll go from there?
Yeah, so Lavo post tribal, I don't have a ton of notes here, but what I do have is Teeny kind of explaining to Saul that the reason she voted for him is simply that she just couldn't bring herself to vote for Asia. And then she kind of has this moment of, I don't know if I'd call it guilt, but this kind of overwhelmed emotional moment, I guess, where Saul takes the vote really well. He's very understanding and even kind of is comforting Keeney in this moment of insecurity. And he even says, like, hey, it's a game. Nobody out here should take anything personal. Cause I think,
Y-
I don't know, I think she was feeling guilty about sending Asia home. I'm not really, she was
Yeah, and
really upset about something. It was hard for me to tell what
it
exactly.
it was hard to tell exactly what, but I completely agree with Saul in this point.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the game is you have to send people home, so that's fine. It's gonna happen. Um, as far as I find this is a great foreshadowing moment though, because so much of this episode is dictated around how individuals interact with each other in the game of Survivor.
Oh, for sure.
And to see Teeny's emotions coming out so early with everything that we're going to get later between Saul and Rome and Genevieve. And I'm going to keep calling her Genevieve for the whole season. It's me living next to a jurisdiction qui parlait en français. But Genevieve, there's so much in there's so much human emotion in this episode that it's a great place really for them to start.
Yeah, it is. And I love this. And this is an interesting tribe so far. I like Teeny. I really like Saul. Saul's on my team.
Yeah.
And ultimately we lost someone from my team, but I wasn't that upset about it because Saul stayed.
Yeah. At the end of the day, we were, and I'll get into this, but once we have the journey, it was pretty evident that somebody on your team was going. So,
Well, Lavo had three targets that were discussed.
Yeah,
The
we'll
one that
get
looked like the one that I thought was gonna be it for a while wasn't on my team. The other two were.
interesting. I'm sure we'll get into that later in the episode. But let's pop over to Gato right now,
Yeah.
where we have some interesting interactions going on, notably between, I guess, well, there's a bunch of groups of two and groups of three here that are just trying to essentially figure out who fits in where. So we have this new sort of alliance. I don't really think it's an alliance, but Annika and Rachel sure think it's an alliance in terms of the three girls being the breadwinners group. But then when Sierra tells that to Andy, it stirs up some information because now, even though it's a completely trivial non-event in terms of how this Gata tribe is actually functioning, we have a situation where Andy knows information from Sierra before Sam does.
Which really ticks Sam off, by the way.
Yeah, and you can't blame him at that point because Andy is supposed to be just the extra vote to get them over the line.
See, you say that, but then we see later a confessional from Sam where he goes, Sierra wants to vote Andy out. That doesn't work for me. I can't do that. So
Yeah,
I think Andy is more than just an extra vote to Sam. I think that's somebody he genuinely trusts and wants to take a little ways.
interesting. That's a good point too. Could go either way, but I can certainly see that ticking Sam off because now he has a Sam goes at least from being in a very stable position in the game to having a few potential threats.
Yeah, for sure.
And the three girls is a threat to Sam. The possibility that Sierra and Andy could be closer than Sierra and Sam at a vote is a threat to Sam.
Yeah. Ultimately, I get where Sam's coming from. I think he probably overreacted a tiny bit, but
That
I
makes
get it.
sense.
But I do want to talk about the three girls thing for a second.
Yeah,
Because the beginning of the episode, Sierra's like, "Oh, the other tribes asked if we're dating." And she said the same thing I did. Like, how did they come to that conclusion? I'm confused.
yeah,
But she even says, like, to make the line, because she doesn't want the other tribes to know how close they're working together, even though they're not dating. But to make this line clear, that's why she wants to spend time with just the girls, also. And I just think this is a great move.
yeah. It is a good move from her
And it's a
part.
great camouflage, and the other two girls don't seem to suspect at all that Sam is still her top alliance, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a good move to her part. I agree with you. I still don't know how the other tribes have figured out that Sam and Sierra are a duo. Could something have been maybe set on a journey that we don't notice? Could it just be something they're picking up in challenges from the two of them seemingly being maybe more trustworthy of each other than other competitors? Who really knows? They
Yeah,
haven't explained this, but it has to be one of those two
yeah, it does.
because last time I checked, production keeps a better eye on people being like Cowboy and just deciding I'm going to go canoeing to the other tribe's camp. They don't do that no more.
The crazy thing with that is I don't even think his intention was to go to the other tribe's camp. I think they just stumbled upon it somehow.
That's true.
I've, oh, yeah, that's That's super confusing and amazing all at once. Like, what are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. So do you want to move in to Tuku?
Yeah,
All right. So going into Tuku, we have some, I guess, tribe dynamics here that could be a bit all over the place. We see Gabe and Sue, um, sharing emotional information, but at the same time, we also see Sue closer to Caroline. So, like, kind of like I hinted at on my I guess it'll be a few days old since you guys watched this, but on my social media post today, this this group is feeling certainly in power, but I wouldn't count Kyle out just yet
Yeah,
because tribe dynamics, there's always somebody on the bottom and there's always somebody looking for a spare vote.
yeah. Here's my question though. Sue lies about her age and says she's 45 instead of 58.
Yeah.
Why? Everybody already like knows that like she's really old by survivor age.
Yeah,
Like what difference does this make? They
it
still see
doesn't.
you as like the old woman on the tribe. Like
Yeah, you're right. I'm not sure what benefit that gives her at all. I didn't quite get it. But hey, she can make her own strategic decisions. I guess it's probably also on the scale of survivor lies, not one that's gonna come back up to like destroy your game if people find out.
yeah. So speaking of Sue, do we want to talk about her and the B word?
Beware advantage, absolutely. That comes next. Now, this was an interesting one.
Yeah.
When I saw that watermelon fall out of the tree, I'm just like, what the bleep is going on? What was your reaction to the new type of beware advantage that comes up here? And I mean, now we've gone from making up, well, not making up, but repeating ridiculous phrases about Mike having to pretend that he loves the most beautiful game of soccer in 42, all the way to coconuts full of paint falling out of trees in the jungle of Fiji. Beware advantages just keep evolving every single season.
This was a lot of paint.
Yeah,
And her response is try to clean it all up and hide it. Whereas I think my response would have been run away from it and get to the ocean and clean off. And then play dumb if anyone asks if I've seen it or what's up with the paint. If
yeah, that's
it's
a
nearby, just try to get to the ocean and wash off. Why are you spending so much time around it trying to make it disappear?
yeah, that's a great point. Um, had you done that, it's probably a lot easier. Even if you don't know anything about it, I mean, yeah, paint in the jungle of Fiji is probably a little odd to say the least, and certainly out of place because it's not natural in that environment by any means. So you know it's if somebody sees it though, you know it's tied to the game. But if Sue can get rid of anything on her instantly, you don't know that it's her that has it that's tied to the game. For all you know, it could be anything. And
Exactly.
therefore, it's a lot easier to be like, I haven't seen it. Well, nobody sees it. Eventually, somebody's going to pull out an idol. And by that time, people aren't going to think of it as a lie. They're going to think of it as a good game move. Or they're going to be like the 46 cast and walk out with that idol, and we'll never know why the hell was there ever paint here.
Yeah. I think the one problem with my plan is if someone asked her about it, we're gonna see in a few minutes that she's a terrible liar.
Yeah.
But before we get to her being a terrible liar, she finds the idol amongst the paint, and it's already a full idol.
Yeah.
The progression is already gone. It's not, oh, good for one tribal, you can make it three, then you can make it permanent. It's already just permanent. It's good till five.
Which makes sense. I think they like to do that, like, evolving game at the beginning just to see in the premiere how much risk people want to take on the first day. But at this point of the game, they want to make sure that players don't just feel the need to play idols just to play idols. They want to have castaways play idols when it's in at least in their mind in their best interest. And as much as some people hated it, watching somebody go out with an idol can almost be as exciting as someone playing one.
Yeah, for sure.
So
And
I'm not in, even though I liked what they did in the premiere, I'm not in any way taken back by not having that at this point.
I don't really
It's,
mind it. I
I
was
think
just
it's just a
surprised.
natural evolution of the game as we move out of the opening phase of the game. And even though we're still solidly in the tribal phase of the game, we're probably at a point, and we'll get to this when we talk about the amulets coming out, at a point where I
Yes.
think everybody in this game is now thinking of making the merge in a couple of days. Because in this expedited 26-day game, they're probably what, 3, 4 days away from the merge.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
It seems like it would be to me if they voted out 4 people. It'll probably merge at 12.
Yeah.
So, yeah, about 4 days away. And then, well, at least 4 days away from what you and I call the merge, and maybe 6 in the eyes of Jeff. But
Well, don't get me started on that. I'm it's we've done 2 live seasons since we started our show, and I've made fun of Earn the Merge both of those seasons.
yeah,
It's kind of a tradition. The episode comes around,
we'll come to it when it comes in about 3 weeks from
we'll
now.
come up with a fun, sarcastic episode title. This feels like a good place, though, to point out that we made fun of Earn the Merge our first season back in 45
yeah,
and called our episode Earn the Jury because they were already at the merge.
that
Only
was.
to then the next week be like, hey, you've made the merge, but the first merge boot still doesn't make the jury. He did that just to get me back for making fun of them, I'm pretty sure.
Yep, production just wanted to take off
Jeff-
a very small podcast that
Jeffrey
has a
listens
lot of
to
fun
our
doing it.
show, and nobody can convince me otherwise.
That's
So,
hilarious. All right, so moving on, right? Well, not really moving on. We're going to stay with Sue here, but after she has now found the full idol, we see Sue at the water well, who thinks that note note that as the we're cutting to commercial, Sue is saying, I accomplished this whole like covered the blood on your hands, and I've cleaned up everything, and I've got all of the leaves in the jungle, only for her to go and get a drink of water. And guess what, Sue? There's no mirrors in the Fijian jungle. You don't know what's on your hair and in your on your face. You can't see them. So no, you didn't cover all your tracks. And Caroline and Tiana certainly are two who figure out what's wrong with you. Are you okay? Do you need medical?
yeah, and this is first off, I did mention that I thought her trying to clean up the giant mess of paint wasn't the best idea. It was hilarious to watch. Like watching her try to clean up all that paint
Yeah.
without really any supplies to do it with was funny. But we get this scene at the water well, and this is what I said earlier when I said she proves she's a terrible liar. Because Tiana and Caroline are like, hey, there's red on your chin. Is that blood? And she goes, oh, yeah, I cut myself. And they're like, what happened? It's also down. Where'd you cut yourself at? It's also on like your hand or your leg or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm fine. I didn't cut myself.
It was horrible.
And it just like you see on like a TV show or a sitcom where like it's a joke how bad of a liar someone is, and it seems really exaggerated. I felt like I was watching that scene here
Yeah.
of watching some
Absolutely.
like kid in a sitcom try to lie to their parents and be absolutely obvious about it.
Try to lie to their parents. Only is thing is the generations are totally switched between Caroline and Sue.
And this is what I was talking about earlier when I said I don't think she had a great episode.
No,
Was
I can see
Tiana's
that.
you threw her name out there for a contender for player of the week, but she's got she found an idol. That's great. she's got suspicion on her now, at least from Tiana, probably Caroline too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess we'll see next week what at least based on the preview, what happens with Tiana's game moving forward, and it's going to be interesting to see how she sits in this tribe. But there's certainly some. Not all is easy at Tuku going forward on a lot of aspects, and Sue's idol is probably one of them.
I need to lose. We need to lose someone not from my tribe next week.
Yeah, we need a very ancient European empires to burn down.
Yeah, well, that just anyone that's not on my team, I'm okay, and isn't Sam, or I'm good with. Right? I don't want my entire tribe to be out in the first like
Pretty
pre-merge,
much.
like it almost did last year, last season.
Absolutely, I agree. Should
So,
be. It's an interesting fantasy draft though, because in the first 3 weeks we all lost somebody.
and I didn't even do this on purpose, but my team had originally had two people from each tribe.
Oh wow. I did not even notice that.
I learned that watching the premiere, looking to see what tribe my people were on. 'Cause, oh, I didn't even know the tribes when we were drafting like the two of you did. I hadn't seen the tribe release yet.
All right. So moving forward, let's go back to Lavo here. And obviously, after last week, Sol feels in trouble, and I think that's completely reasonable for Sol. And he starts looking for an idol. And could Rome make this even more Boston Robish than he Boston Rob did himself in Winners at War, where Sol not only has him following, not only is Rome following Sol while he's looking for an idol, but he's literally standing right next to him.
See, you got impressions of Rob. I got impressions of this episode a couple times. Rome gave me impressions of another male villain from Heroes versus Villains, whose initials are RH.
Yeah, I was thinking some of that as well.
Between this, because like if I remember right, there was a pre-merge Heroes versus Villains where like Sandra and Courtney were clearly the outside at
Yeah,
this point, and Russell just has people watching after them. They can't go in. Rome even takes it to another level. Like at least
yeah.
when you
Rome
usually have
Rome's
someone
behavior in
babysitting
this
them, they're off at
episode,
like a distance. Rome is like right on top of them, being very
exactly.
confrontational about it. Very
Rome's behavior
aggressive.
in this episode is something we've never seen before on this show.
Yeah, and the others, we even see two people that have worked with Rome tell Saul like, "Hey, we don't with Teeny and Genevieve, we don't like the way he's handling this. He's
Yeah,
being."
and that's exactly where I wanted to go next. I mean, we don't need to cover Rome that much in this section. It's pretty obvious. Anyone who's watched the episode knows what happened. But the conversation between Saul and Genevieve, I really like, because Genevieve takes Saul aside, lets him know that she does not appreciate the way that her ally is approaching this game, and really leaves the door open for other potential moves to be made that don't involve Saul going home. And I will get into this because I know, like you said, that I told you in text that I have quite a bit to talk about. A lot of it'll come at the challenge slash journey is where my whole theory comes from, and we'll get there shortly. But we're really starting to see Genevieve playing the game and opening up a lot of doors for her to really be maybe not the most flashy player in this tribe, but the most targeted and strategic one.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, there was a few things where Rome made me think of Russell this episode. Not just, and there's two in this scene. It's not just the following him, but to try to get Saul to not look for an idol. This is kind of the first threat. They have the whole like threat versus ultimatum conversation later,
Yeah.
which is just a giant argument about semantics and vocabulary. I really don't care, but it doesn't make a difference in that case. But this one, Rome tells him like, "Hey, if you keep looking for an idol, I'm gonna vote for you. If you
Yeah.
stop looking, maybe I won't."
Maybe I won't, as if that's gonna ever impact any
I
decision
think he
Rome
said
makes.
maybe I won't. Maybe he said if you stop looking, I won't. But the whole like if you look for an idol, I'm voting for you thing. That felt like just as much of a threat as the threat slash ultimatum thing later in the episode does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he just I don't know. Rome reminded me of Russell Hantz really hard this episode. And it's not in the ways where Russell's entertaining either.
No.
So we'll see
Yeah,
how it goes.
I can absolutely see that. So let's move back to Gato just for a bit. And once again, we see a situation where not only is Andy in these situations that he's with Sam, but he's getting more information from Sierra, and that's causing drama within his alliance. But he's just a sloppy player. And we see Andy not only have his shot in the dark that he's talked about in the game before, but that it just falls out of his bag and he loses it twice.
Yeah,
I
just
mean,
right out on the ground below the shelter that they just saw it there and like, oh, okay.
so he's now lost his shot in the dark, lost his shot in the dark again, put back a beware advantage into the tree, yet he still seems to be the most desirable ally on this beach for everyone.
It's insane.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if I'd say for everyone. For Sam, for sure. I
yeah.
don't think
But
we've
for
seen like
Sierra as well.
Annika or Rachel pull Andy aside once.
No, I don't think so. But if they had to, they'd probably try.
I think they have Sierra, so they think they have a majority. They don't feel like they need either of the guys
I
for
guess
number.
the I guess the thing to think about here is that we haven't seen really this tribe since they voted John out.
Yeah,
So who knows what strategic discussions are going on that are just not getting shown because they're not that relevant. If they go back to tribal next week, everything we know about Gata could go out the window.
yeah. And I love Gato so far. They've
Oh
been
yeah.
in it. There's no one on that tribe I don't like.
No, absolutely.
Like you guys can probably guess, like with Lavo, for example, I'm not a huge fan of Rome
Yeah.
at all. Tuku, I don't dislike Sue. I don't necessarily like her either. I'm trying to figure out what I think of her. She's very up and down this season so far. But God, I just genuinely like all five of them so far for different
Yeah.
reasons.
I agree.
We've barely seen any of Rachel, but she's on my tribe, so I like her for that reason.
Gata, I do like everyone. We'll see if they have to vote what happens. Tuku, I would say that right now Gabe is probably my favorite.
Yeah,
And then Lavo, Genevieve's my favorite. Rome is the most annoying player, not only in this game, but I think I can say the most annoying player in the new era.
yeah. When you're so cocky and arrogant that, and maybe I'm alone on this, but people put you in a conversation with Russell Hantz, and
Yeah.
it's not for strategic purposes or
And
like he's arrogant and annoying at times, but Russell Hantz is he's entertaining sometimes also.
and I'm just gonna say how you mentioned cocky and arrogant. I think there's a big difference too between cocky and arrogant, but also entertaining versus cocky and arrogant and just being a dick to everybody else. Because you guys have heard on this podcast probably a few dozen times in terms of the new era how Sydney is one of my favorite players of this era. And
Yeah.
she certainly fits that cocky and arrogant model perfectly, but every single one of her confessionals are friggin' hilarious.
Yeah. Whereas like Rome, you get
Offering an ultimatum to people is just being rude.
you have the threat slash ultimatum, which becomes a whole argument on the beach and at tribal. Call it whichever word, guys. It doesn't
Yeah,
make a
it's the
difference.
same
It's
thing.
awfully. He's strong arming him either way, and it's an awful way to handle that.
Yeah,
You have, I don't know. It's not quite as bad or as rude yet, but he's just reminding me of Russell so much this episode, and I don't like it.
yeah, absolutely. All right. So after we get this conversation about um the shot in the dark, and then we see, I guess we already kind of jumped ahead in terms of the information that Andy has from Sierra that becomes a shock to Sam.
Yeah. So
Um, Go ahead.
what we didn't touch on is how does this affect Sam and Sierra? Are they at an impasse, or can they work through this?
I think they can easily work through this. It's just a guess, but I don't think we're going to see much of it until they either have to vote somebody out or until it's just completely irrelevant and they've both made the merge.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to bet that the second option is more likely, that it was just a little, oh, that's uncomfortable. Oh, well, we're still winning, whatever. But come 4 days from now, we forgot it even happened.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that takes us into our next challenge,
Yes.
which I found really fun to watch because I don't know if you saw this, but if you saw anything from either like Teeny or Mike Turner or Eliza Orlins from the Survivor event in Manhattan this week online last weekend, but the past castaways were all competing in this very challenge, and I'm like, why are they doing a challenge at a event in New York City that they've never actually done on the show, only to see them doing it on the show this week?
Yeah. And before we dive into the challenge itself, like the new era has made normal, it's immunity and reward.
Yeah,
For those of you that are newer fans of the show, immunity and reward used to be two separate challenges every episode. And
yeah,
the new era has kind of, well, I say new era. Winners at War barely had only reward challenges also.
yeah.
But
Even going back into the 30s, there's some weeks that don't have a reward challenge. It's kind of on and off. And I mean, I think production has figured out that, at least from listening to previous players and listening to fans, that we've been just like clamoring for more camp life
yeah,
and more of a better understanding of what's going on in the game. And people who watch Survivor 47 seasons after it was like the biggest thing in the history of American entertainment are
yeah,
watching it because they're interested in social politics, not necessarily because they want to see how physically strong somebody is playing the game. If you're watching Survivor just to see challenges, American Ninja Warrior and The Challenge are on other networks at the same time.
yeah. Well, and this wasn't even the conversation I wanted to make with the reward part. I just
Sorry,
kind
I'm
of got
slipping, but I'm
sidetracked.
still here.
But
You can keep talking. I have a wire wrapped around a chair and it's about to knock me over.
okay, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So the point I wanted to make with the reward before I got sidetracked, as I do, which by the way,
I'm
if you
good.
only listen to this show and you think I get sidetracked a lot on here, go check out Pit Stop Pals because my
Yeah.
attention span is like half of what it is on this show when I'm recording that show. Brett's laughing because I'm pretty sure he listens to me and
Yep.
Kevin Oliver do Pit Stop Pals. He knows how awful the two of us are at staying on track. But where was I? Point and tail. Oh, it's for reward also, and the reward for the first place tribe is
Buck, buck, buck,
live
buck.
chickens, and this just has such an old school feel to it.
Oh,
I
did it
love
ever.
it very much. I love the chicken reward. It's a classic throughout the show. Thank you, Jeffrey, for bringing that back.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved how the players could hear the chickens before Jeff even said what the reward was.
Yeah, and also, so there's three egg laying hens. Second place gets six eggs from those hens, which is a good reward. But again, I don't feel like we need to give second place a reward. I would be okay if only the first place tribe got reward.
Yeah,
Second place doesn't go to tribal. That's your reward. You want a reward? Finish first.
exactly.
I don't maybe I'm in the minority on that. I'm not sure. I kind of want to make that a Facebook post on my own aside from the show and see what Survivor Facebook and not Reddit, but the Survivor Facebook community says.
I mean, make it on your own if you want, but share it on our page so we can have that discussion with the listeners.
Well, we can make it show content. We just hadn't
Yeah.
discussed it yet, so I didn't want to come out and say it would be from the show page.
Well, let's put it from the show because I love that idea.
Okay, so here's how the challenge works, just kind of before we get into the challenge itself. And so they have a giant cube. Oh my gosh. Sorry. I have a hockey game on my phone, and my team is playing what was the worst team in the league last year, and just went down 4-1. So
Ah,
anyway, they have
my
this.
team beat the Stanley Cup champions just tonight. Go Sens, go.
We've got our backup goalie in net who was really good last year, but and last I heard we were out shooting the Sharks also. So I don't know what's happening, but oh well. My focus is here first and foremost.
Bruce, the Blues just need to outshoot the Sharks and then bite them back.
Well, yeah, I wasn't even going to reference that this time, but I do have something to tell you about that when we stop recording, though. So they have this giant cube that they're rolling across this dirt until it's underneath the first bag, and the bag is hanging above them. Someone has to climb up the big cube that's like double the height they are, probably.
Yeah.
And get it and untie it. Then they have to do this with another bag in the same way. Then they have to use the pieces in this bag to build this little frame that they're throwing bean bags through the frame to land on a barrel. And then after that, there's all these heavy sandbags that they have to put on their tribe's This is like three different challenges in one. I don't know what's happening. A ton of heavy, heavy sandbags that they have to put
Yep.
on their tribe's platform. And after that, they can then start a classic survive. Well, I don't know if I'd say classic. It's been used enough times where fans recognize, and that's the fire flame puzzle.
Yeah.
But a new version of it, I guess. He made a point to say an all new flame puzzle. We've had flame puzzles with this same like vertical setup for years now.
Yeah, I think they just made it larger.
Yeah.
Because this one looked humongous.
Yeah.
But who
They
really
have
cares
also
how
been just the pieces fit together differently because Carson
Yeah.
made such a big deal about 3D printing the exact puzzles.
exactly.
So they're
But
changing. Maybe it's just previously before they had like the pieces fit together in the same way all the time.
Yeah.
Now they're changing the puzzle itself each time. I don't know.
But who really cares how big or small the puzzle is or how the pieces fit together when you can't even get a single piece?
Also, oh, we'll get to that. I have
Oh,
a
we will.
question on that. But also, why are we making such a big deal about new puzzles? Who cares if people 3D print them and practice them at home?
I'm the opposite with you as you on there. We got to disagree, and this is going to have to be a social media post then. I thought as we saw David Wright and then Christian and then Carson took it up a whole nother level, that even I was asking the question before, why are we even having puzzles? Because certain players just do them in seconds and it's boring to watch.
Yeah, but I like the dedication of I want to be on this show. I'm preparing. You don't even need the 3D printer. You can buy these survivor puzzles off of like Etsy, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, let's put this online and see what people think about it.
Like, yes, some players are gonna fly through it faster than others, but like that's kind of the reward you get for being so dedicated and putting so much preparation into it. Hard
I
work pays
guess.
off. Like, I don't know. Like I get where the show's coming from, but at the same time, if people don't want to get killed on a puzzle, practice. You've got time.
That's one way to look at it.
I'm the same way with fire. When people are in fire making and they're struggling, I'm like, you had 26 days or however many days to be practicing this.
Yeah, fire, I completely agree with you on because everybody knows it's going to come up and it's the same, I guess, level for everyone.
But until this season and probably last season also, they were reusing the same puzzles over and over again too. You probably could have guessed which one of those were coming up.
Yeah,
I don't know. So, where were we in the challenge? We're talking about the fire puzzle. Lavo's the first to get through the convoluted obstacle course.
yeah.
And so they're starting on the puzzle. A lot of times with these puzzles where tribes have to select two people, the two people are both working on it. The way Rome and Genevieve decided to do this was she just hands him pieces and he sees if it'll work, and then she hands him a next piece if it doesn't.
And this is what I want to know. You tell me. But I told you that I had a lot of thoughts on this, and this is really where all my thoughts in this episode come from. In my view, I want to ask the question is, did Genevieve give Rome every piece?
I don't
Because
think so. There's too many
because
pieces.
here's what I'm thinking. I personally, from just what I saw in the episode, think that Genevieve, Saul, Keyshawn, and Tini at this stage of the game wanted to throw the challenge and get Rome out of here.
Okay, so I had a question about throwing also, but it's the other way.
Okay.
My thought watching Rome try this was because after everything we've seen with Rome and Saul this episode, and them butting heads in the woods and arguing at the shelter, I believe, and we kind of saw it last week. I'm sitting here thinking, is Rome single-handedly deciding to throw this to get Saul out?
Interesting. So we both think the challenge may have been thrown. We don't necessarily
Well,
agree on who threw it.
the question popped into my head, but
Yeah.
ultimately my conclusion is it was not thrown. This was just terrible execution because
Okay.
think about it. And I mentioned Hans a few times in this episode. Take 22 for example. Zapatera threw a challenge to get rid of him. We saw confessionals of them saying,
Yep.
we're going to throw this, and afterwards, other confessionals, we did throw that. Go back to China, my favorite season. We knew Jamie and, oh, what's her name? Jamie and someone from Jean Hu.
PG.
It was PG, thank you. I
Yeah.
had Sharia in my head for some reason. We saw them, like,
Yeah.
production showed us saying, we're gonna throw this to get rid of Aaron or James. We saw the little clip of them tossing the thing off to the side.
Pearl Islands with Drake.
My point is when challenges get thrown, the production shows us the people telling us in the confessional they were throwing it.
So I want to give a counterpoint here to
We never
that.
saw that this time.
Yeah, I want to give a counterpoint here to that though. And this is more on my theory of Genevieve throwing it. I'm about to call her another French Canadian name again. But this is on my theory of Genevieve throwing it, not of Rome throwing it. Yes, you're correct. We don't see that. But after the challenge, Teeny goes off on a journey and loses her vote. As we saw the quote from the challenge this week, and I mean the MTV show The Challenge, once Teeny loses her vote, the math is not working out. So they don't throw it. Teeny loses her vote. Rome has a steal a vote. That means 2 and 2 if they decided to throw it. Therefore, Rome is safe. They're going to rocks and pulling between each other. It makes no entire sense to throw that challenge anymore. And that's why Genevieve makes the move that she does to snipe Keyshawn as opposed to still targeting Rome because there just wasn't enough votes without Teeny's vote to pull off that move. That's why I personally believe production chose to not show any context of them throwing a challenge because they can't throw the challenge. They have to decide to pivot at the last second and have Genevieve make the move that she does.
Yeah. I ultimately I don't think it was thrown. Maybe I'm wrong. I think in that moment in the challenge, but also, and this just came to my mind. This
I
whole season, anytime we've seen the few times we've seen Genevieve talk at this point, it's largely been about her liking Rome and working
yeah,
with him. So I don't see why she would be part of a group to throw a challenge against him. I
because I think that she knows that he is going to be the downfall of her game.
Well, she knows that, but she ultimately saves him at the end. So she said it. I'm not convinced she believes it, but if it was thrown, I think it was him. But I don't believe it was thrown because if it would have been, we would have seen a confessional of someone telling us they threw it, and
True.
we never saw that. Anytime a challenge has been thrown, that we've seen someone tell us they throw it, and that never
Boy,
happened this time.
I need to write these down because this week is going to probably have the most topics for discussion on socials that we've got in quite a while.
Well, one of the debates we've had actually nothing to do with this episode. We just got sidetracked on puzzles.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked if Rome threw it. But I feel like, especially with how cocky he is, if he had made that decision,
Oh, that we would have seen.
we would have seen it. And also, like him throwing it would explain why the way they were doing the puzzle was she hands him the pieces and he single-handedly tries to figure it out. Because
Yeah.
you look at Lavo, you look at not Lavo, they're a mess. You look at Gato, you look at Tuku, and it's both of the people were simultaneously getting pieces and trying to work on it together.
Right.
I still don't think he threw it. I think he just got overconfident and arrogant, and he wanted to be the clutch one that finished out the challenge strong, and he messed up big time.
Well,
But
I'm with you there. I don't think that Rome threw it either. But
I
do
don't
I
think
ever
anyone
think
threw it.
somebody else did? But hey, the audience, you guys be the judge of this at the end. Do you want to go to the journey?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so very fun journey today where the winners get to pick which three players go. And we see Teeny. Um, who else is it? Rachel and Gabe? I forget. Let me look this up. So Andy and Caroline. There we go.
Also, real quick, because you'll appreciate this, off
Yeah,
topic, that fourth San Jose goal that I got all annoyed about and turned the game off of my phone and just put Gamecast on, that was shorthanded, I just learned.
done.
The Sharks are our kryptonite. We lost to them 2 or 3 times. I don't think we beat them other than once last season. So
Yeah.
this is just what it is. I expect this when we play them going forward. But the journey was really interesting.
Well, side note, you guys are coming up here to Ottawa in a couple of weeks.
Oh, let's. I didn't realize it was that close. I was texting you yesterday about watching it together on Zoom. I didn't even
Yeah,
realize how close it was. We've got the home opener coming up that I have tickets for, so I'm super excited. I haven't
nice.
been to opening night before.
All right, so on the journey, we see Andy, Caroline, and Teeny here, and they have to flip an hourglass And if one person is willing to sacrifice their vote, all three will get an advantage. If the hourglass runs out and nobody does it, they all lose their vote and will not get an advantage.
Before we get to the game itself, though,
Yeah,
the little gossip session beforehand. Andy tells Teeny and Caroline that he's at the bottom of Gato and he's in a low information spot.
yeah.
And if they want to find the cracks on Gato, come scoop him up at the merge. This
Smart.
would have been true at the end of during or at the end of episode 1.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this is true at this point. I don't
I
know if
don't
he still believes he's at the bottom or if he's lying just to try to get them to trust him and want to work
that
with him at the
that's
merge.
exactly it. I don't think that he's at the bottom, but after what they got to see and him passing out in the first challenge, it's easy if you're on another beach to believe that Andy's at the bottom. So therefore, any information that he can get at the merge is invaluable to whatever his best move is at the time. And if that's to jump to another alliance, it's to jump to another alliance. And if that's to feed information back to Sam and to Sierra, that's to feed them information. If that's to see the three of them maybe jump with another three from a different tribe and just run the game all the way to the finale, then that's the way that he might want to play. If Andy could pull off a move like that, he could win this game.
He
I don't
could.
think he will, but he could.
It would be lots of entertaining if he did.
Yeah.
So I am curious to see what happens with Andy at the merge. But into this game. So this is interesting. This flip your thing, flip the hourglass. And it's simple rules. There's 3 of you. If one of you agrees to sacrifice your vote, all 3 of you get an advantage. If you can't come to a conclusion, none of you get one, and you all 3 lose your vote. So,
Yeah.
simple game, but lots of pressure, lots of high stakes. What are your thoughts on this version of the journey where we see another new game?
I really liked watching this game. It was definitely a social experiment that went very well on TV. I gotta say, I'm a bit disappointed here in Caroline.
Yeah,
Caroline is a player who should be in a comfortable position, especially seeing that Kyle is on the bottom of the tribe. It would have had she could have built so much trust with the other two if she said, guys, I'm not going anywhere. My alliance is 4 against 1. Let's all get the advantage. Whereas if you're Andy, you need your vote so that you, Sam, and Sierra can take out Rachel and Annika. And if you're Teeny, you're going to tribal council tonight. Whatever may have happened, I know we just had a debate on what the core reason is. I still believe that Teeny wants to get rid of Rome at this point, but Teeny needs her vote, and that messes up so many possible outcomes that could have happened in tribal during this episode because Teeny doesn't have a vote, coupled with Rome having to steal a vote.
yeah. And I will, couple things. I will go backwards to that debate because I just realized we start seeing Keyshawn and talk about wanting Rome gone after the challenge. We had no indication that all we had seen from Lavo before the challenge was everyone saying Saul was next and he was on the bottom.
Yeah, but we don't know when conversations happen and when editing chose to show them to us.
Yes, but storytelling wise, I still don't think the challenge was thrown, but if it was them, they would have shown us them getting tired of Rome beforehand for that to make sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll put it up to a vote. I don't
Yeah.
think it was thrown at all because just simply I think they would have given us a confessional telling us it was thrown if it was. But my other thing is, and it's still a majority, so I still agree with you. Caroline didn't play this as well as she could have. But you said her alliance is a 4 against 1. I'm still not fully convinced it's not 3 against 2.
Okay.
Because the three of them, her and Gabe and Sue, are tight, but we keep seeing scenes with the three of them, or Gabe talking about how much he loves working with Sue, or
Yeah.
Caroline and Sue, or a little bit of Caroline and Gabe, like one scene, but not much. I don't think we've seen a scene of the three of them and Tiana. I don't think we've seen a scene with all four of them together. I don't think they're a tight four. I think it's a 3 against 2.
I guess
And
that
it
could be.
goes back to me saying that her voting
But
TK out to avoid rocks wasn't a good move for her.
but do you think, and let me ask you this question, I honestly don't know. Do you think if they were to go to tribal council and Caroline didn't have a vote, that Tiana would vote with Kyle and go to rocks again, or do you think that Kyle would be gone?
I mean, I think if they had,
I shouldn't say go to rocks again, but
yeah,
it still stands from the fact that the whole reason she flipped was to not want to worry about it before.
yeah, but I just don't think they're a tight four. I think the three of them think of themselves as a three, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that if they go to tribal, they could decide to vote her out.
Interesting. That makes sense.
I don't think they have that loyalty to her that they have to each other. That's why I'm saying I think it's 3-2, not 4-1.
Fair. Um, I think that if they were to vote at this point, I agree with you that it's not this complete tight four, including Tiana. But if they were to go vote somebody out, I do think it would safely be Kyle. I think Tiana's in that point where she could just go along with the three, last one more day, knowing that at that point she's probably going into the merge, or at least has a 66% chance to go into the merge where she can become the number one free agent in the game and do whatever she wants
Yeah.
with people from any tribe.
I kind of want to see this tribe go to tribal just to see what happens. But I also don't, because like I just said, I'm not convinced that my winner pick, Tiana, wouldn't get voted out. So
Yeah.
I I don't know. The tribe I want to go to tribal next is the tribe where one of my people won't go home. And I don't know.
Which tribe that is.
I feel like it's probably Gata, but at the same time, like I love Gata. I don't want any of them to go home. I like all five of them. So
Yeah.
I'm in a bad position here. Rome's not on my team. Yes. Sorry, 4-2 now.
Nice.
Rome's not in a bet with time with 17 minutes left in the third two. We can score 2 goals. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Rome's not in the worst position, but he's not in a good one.
No.
I'll say this just so someone else is aware. I get a text or set in person before and after we record Pit Stop Pals of Kevin Oliver, Reality Realm contributor, third person in our fantasy game, my co-host on Pit Stop Pals, keeps saying, "You keep saying Rome's going home. Everyone's tired of Rome. How many times were you convinced Q was going home next week last season?" And I swear, if I have to keep, if this happens to me again, where I'm convinced that people are tired of someone, and then they keep them around for what Rome was going home at one point this week.
Yeah.
I felt good about that, and then we'll get there, but he kind of accidentally saved himself in a way, which I'll
Yeah.
explain what I mean by that in a second. But it's but the rewards for the journey, because Teeny ends up sacrificing her own vote, make me happy because it's a flashback to my favorite New Era season. I think the only other time we've seen these. It's the amulets.
Yeah.
So, which of course, I said the only time we've seen them is from my favorite New Era season. That of course is 45. If you're new to the show, where the way they work are if three of them are left in the game, they must all be used at once. If two are left, they both have to be used. But if only one is left in the game, it's a full idol. And we saw this work out in 45, where I forget who it was. It was Austin and two girls, I believe.
Yeah, I forget.
But they had said, hey, let's work together, let's use these. And then ultimately, when it came down to it, Austin was able to get the other two out of the game to the point where he had a full idol.
Yep.
These three of this is starting the same way as it did with 45. These three are saying, hey, let's work together. If we all get to the merge, we can really use this
They
power
won't
to
do
our
it.
advantage. But I feel like because Austin ended up coming out on top, but all three of those people with 45 were kind of saying the same things and wanting to come after, wanting to have that idol and wanting to take shots at the other two people. I'm curious if we're gonna see that same story unfold or not. And if the 45 thing does happen again, who comes out on top?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Looking at these three, I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I think Andy is gonna be the one to come out on top.
Interesting.
What about you?
That would kind of follow the 45 mold, by the way. Guy with dark hair.
Yeah,
Austin is a bit more put together as a player, of course, but hmm. See, I think Teeny's probably I think I like her gameplay from what we've
mhm,
seen the best, but she's now on a tribe of four that I'd love to talk about this at some point. That I could easily see that tribe being a two versus two situation.
yeah,
Because the person that goes home this episode was the number one of someone left in this game. And I don't know how that's going to go. So, I don't know. I could see it being Andy. I My gut says Teeny, but I don't trust the position she's in. So, it'll be interesting to see. I don't have an actual prediction with, and who knows, maybe they'll end up using it together. Maybe the
yeah.
45 won't happen again. I'd love to see that. I love seeing new things, but
That could be very true.
all these times in Survivor, well, never mind. I was gonna say where like an idol can be used by two people. Has it ever been? But Devins and someone had a two-part idol in 38 that ends up getting used, I believe. Right?
Yep.
Yes.
Three?
Three.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. If we come back from down 4-1 in the third context, our first game we went down 2-0 and looked terrible for 30 minutes of the game, then scored three goals in a minute 55 and won 3-2. So I don't know if my team is good or not, but well, Ryan Sutter scored that. I forgot he plays for us now. He's been around in the league for like a century if you watch hockey.
Yeah,
But so it'll be interesting to see. They show us them coming back. It's the typical thing. Teeny comes back, tells her tribe she lost her vote right out of the gate. And we see Teeny say that she feels powerless, but she trusts her allies that she's with, and she trusts Keyshawn. And so here's where things get interesting. Because Rome tells Genevieve that, hey, Keyshawn threw your name out as the decoy, but you're good. It's not you, it's still Saul. And this right here is what I mean when I say he accidentally saved himself. Because I don't think he meant anything by that. I think it was just him being like, hey, this happened, just so you know, but it's fine. If he doesn't say that, Genevieve was ready to go on with the plan to take Keyshawn, to take Rome out.
yeah,
Rome just being like, and I'm not even convinced that Rome wasn't aware that she didn't know she had been used as a decoy. I think it was just kind of a hey, Just making sure you know this. Everything's fine. We're still going with our plan. But this causes Genevieve to rethink Keyshawn because she didn't know he had used him as a decoy. And Rome, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Rome's intent was to get Genevieve thinking. I genuinely think he just mentioned it in passing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But this gets her thinking about Keyshawn. And my
Yeah.
note here is no with three O's. Please don't let this cause the Rome plan to fall apart. Because I was getting excited. I thought Rome was going home.
Yeah, I think this is really smart from Genevieve here because, at least in my view, as much as the decoy isn't the person going home, how many times have we seen that whoever's name gets thrown out be the one that a vote gets flipped on just because it's so easy? That, yeah, if I'm in Genevieve's spot, I don't want Keyshawn throwing out my name without me knowing about it. So, good move.
Yeah. What do you think about Rome saying this though? Like, was he saying? Do you think he was saying that to get her thinking, or do you agree with me that it was just an offhand remark in passing?
Yeah, I'd agree with you that it was probably just an offhand remark, but anything you say in Survivor is part of the game, whether you intend it to be or not.
Oh, I know, but he completely, in my opinion, maybe the plan wouldn't have gone through, but I think Rome accidentally saved himself.
Yeah,
If
I
he
can see
doesn't
that.
make that one little remark of just, hey, you may or may not know this, but he was gonna go home. I think Genevieve would have been willing to vote him out and go along with Keyshawn's plan.
Yeah,
And Teeny was very excited about that plan and was excited to keep Saul around. I almost hope this tribe goes back to tribal just to see what fireworks unfold, but I don't want to lose Saul off of my teams. And that this tribe is too much chaos. I'm afraid of the crossfire.
yeah,
But and this is where things start going nuts with Lavo. Genevieve tells Rome about her plan to take Keyshawn out. No, she tells Rome about the plan to take him out, which again didn't make me very happy, but she's playing good for her game. She's not worried about what I want to happen, and nor should she be. And here's a quote from her.
yeah,
Well, before I get to her quote, she goes and tells Saul about the plan to take Keyshawn out. And Saul says there's no way he isn't voting Rome and begs her to just stick to the plan in place. And she says afterwards, Rome and Saul are dead set on each other, but what's best for my game is to take a stealth shot at Keyshawn. But this is a game but this is a game where you need numbers and you can't go solo. Genevieve doesn't get to decide who goes home by herself. As
exactly.
we'll see in a few minutes, it turns out she kind of does. But it's because this plan ends up happening. And Saul saying there's no way he isn't voting for Rome. I don't know. He was very serious when he said that. I don't know what happened because Saul ends up voting for Keyshawn. I'd love to know how that changed. We didn't see that.
Yeah,
Like I'm really curious what happened with Saul there because he's been dead set on Rome the whole time. Last week was pretty confident Rome had an idol. Still voted for him.
you, Bruce, just keep talking. I'll be back in like 1 minute.
Yeah, so I'm very curious what happened with Saul here. Like, was there more to that conversation with Genevieve that we didn't know? Was it just he realized Keyshawn when Rome stole Keyshawn's vote, he realized, oh, he's going home anyway. I might as well go with the flow and see what happens? Or because there's something to be said for that. If when Rome steals Keyshawn's vote, Saul could very easily realize, oh, he's going home anyway. it would help me to, because if Saul just goes with the flow, that makes it look like he's being agreeable. He's playing along. He's not being antagonistic and just throwing another vote at Rome that he knows isn't going to do anything again. So maybe that's it. Maybe there was some conversations beforehand that we didn't see that had Saul's mind changed coming in. I do not know. But we also skipped the whole threat versus ultimatum thing, by the way. And when Brett gets back, I will I will ask him about that and see his thoughts. But I do not like the way Rome handled that, basically. When Rome still wanted Saul gone, when they were using Genevieve as a decoy, he goes up to Saul and says, "Hey, we can work together. I won't vote you out, but you have to give me your shot in the dark and vote for Genevieve. If you don't give me your shot in the dark, you're going home anyway because I'm using my steal a vote on you." And that was the whole Saul said, "You're threatening me. I don't take well to that." And Rome said, "I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you an ultimatum." Use whatever word you want. I don't think Rome handled that well. I don't think it changes whether you call it a threat or an ultimatum. Hey, you're back.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
before we
sorry
get
about
into
that. I thought I was going to be sick off camera.
oh, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good now.
So I'll get into where I started my monologue, and I'm proud of myself. I
Yep.
monologued that whole time without saying, "Hey, I'm just stalling," like I've done in past episodes.
Nice.
But we skipped over something before we get to this. I ended my monologue here with the threat versus ultimatum thing, where Rome comes up and says, "Hey, this is when Genevieve is still the decoy before Rome ever knew he was a target." I think before Rome became a target, actually, he comes up to Saul and says, "Hey, we can possibly work together. You have to give me your shot in the dark, and we'll both vote Genevieve out.
Yeah.
If you don't give me your shot in the dark, I'm using my steal a vote on you, so you can't play it anyway, and you're still going home." Saul says, "Hey, you're threatening me. I don't take kindly to that." Rome says, "I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you an ultimatum."
It's the same thing.
It's, oh, I guess ultimatum sounds a little bit better, but
Sounds better. It isn't better in reality.
Rome handled this terribly, and yet he apologizes for it later. I'm not convinced that that wasn't just trying to cover himself because he found Lavo was a
Absolutely.
target. I'm not convinced he meant that apology.
Yeah, you're more than can't be more right. I don't think
Because
he
when
meant it at all.
Genevieve is trying to get Saul to agree to vote for Keyshawn, Rome comes up out of nowhere and apologizes.
Yeah.
So maybe this is me being cynical for once in my life. I don't believe it. But that leads us into where my monologue started, which is Saul said to Genevieve, "There's no way I'm not voting for Rome." So there's a couple things that could have happened, I think. Either there's that conversation keeps going that we don't see, that they convince Saul before tribal and everything went according to plan, or Rome announces he's stealing Keyshawn's vote. Saul sees what's going to happen, that he can't change it,
Yeah.
and votes with them to try to seem agreeable and play along and help us
That
get
is
forward.
that is exactly what I think happened because I think Saul wants to open the door, well, keep the door open to possibly getting rid of Rome now that he's advantageless.
Yeah, advantageless for now.
It's the new era.
It's the new era, and not to sound mean, but I feel like Rome's just kind of be a cockroach of every time we think they can get rid of him, he'll something else will happen. He'll find
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
Guys, just like find some supplies and tie Rome to the tree so he can't look for anything else.
But I mean, it makes sense if that's what Saul did, because you vote for Keyshawn here. You seem that's a slash. Hopefully that got called. Anyway, you my focus is here. I promise, guys. But Saul just last week threw a very antagonistic vote on Rome that I think Saul knew wasn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
And that kind of started this whole thing between, well, Rome started it beforehand, but really upped the ante on this whole thing between them. And so maybe this is the beginning of fences being mended, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Hopefully Rome goes home, but I just don't want Saul to go home. I love Saul and he's on my team.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned this person in his EW as a player that he admires or wants to play like one of those two. But I see it anyway, and a lot of those times they say they want to be like someone. I don't end up seeing it at all. But I see a little bit of Yule with Saul here of just
Yeah.
he's always even keeled and calm and collected, and even in the face of being faced with a threat to matum. I think it's a
I
word
like
there.
that new word.
Put it in the dictionary. But like even in the face of honestly, Rome treated Saul pretty crappy this
Yeah,
episode. Let's
no
be honest
question.
here, guys. We never see Saul lose his cool. The closest we came to that was, can I just go sit on the beach alone? And getting kind of raising his voice a little bit when Rome was following him around everywhere.
Yeah.
But like Saul is always even keeled. He think things through very well. And that's what Yule was. We never saw Yule was always kind of on the same plane. We never really saw him get super mad or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I love Yule, so I'm hoping Saul stays around because he reminds me of a player I like.
Nice.
So we get to tribal. Rome's still trying to cover his butt and apologizing to Saul again for going about the threat slash ultimatum badly. By the way, this whole threat slash ultimatum semantics debate that we had at camp and on the beach with the two of them, we also have this whole debate again at tribal with Probst. Whatever it is, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
Nobody mentions that for some reason. Keyshawn talks about trusting a plan you've put forward. And I wrote here that quote gives me stick to the plan vibes from
Yeah.
Wendell Sir.
Yeah. I picked up on that as well.
And so at this point, they hadn't told us, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. It felt pretty even that Rome, Keyshawn, or Saul could go. I don't know about you. To me, it felt pretty even. Any of the three could go home here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The
Rome
two
announces,
ladies weren't going anywhere, but
do what?
the two ladies weren't going anywhere.
Yeah. But time comes, Rome plays his steel, announces he's playing it on Keyshawn, which we've already talked about on here, but that kind of shocked me at the time.
Yeah.
I thought he was dead set on taking Saul out. I give Genevieve credit. She found a way to get Rome and Saul to put aside their stop pointing their guns at each other for 3 seconds and work together on something.
Yep. It was the move of the season so far.
So Rome steals Keyshawn, and here's the thing. And I wrote this before Keyshawn went home. Spoiler alert, but we've said it already, so oh well. Will the blindsiding use of his idol, will the blindsiding nature of the way he used his steal a vote put Rome in hot water with Keyshawn and Teeny, who are half of his alliance of four he thinks he has? And so Keyshawn's gone, so I'm curious to see if Rome is in hot water with Teeny. I assume he will be.
Yeah.
Keyshawn goes home. Wow, was my note there. And here's what I have written down as that my only post vote out note. I feel like Lavo might become a 2 versus 2, and it'd be Teeny and Saul versus Rome and Genevieve.
Yeah, that could happen.
Because Keyshawn was Teeny's number one.
But then
Genevieve just masterminded this plan to take him out. Teeny
But
is
then we all
clearly
know what
blindsided.
happens. We all know what
Even
happens when it's 2-2, and that's that nobody wants to go to Rocks.
Teeny even looks at Genevieve after the vote, I'm pretty sure, and says why. Very
Yeah.
clearly upset. We know Teeny likes Saul. Teeny was very excited about Saul staying and being a part of the alliance when she thought Rome was going home. I really feel like this might be a two versus two situation here.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because Genevieve seems to have put her foot down and said, I don't want Rome to go home now. Even though most of the episode she was totally going to go with Keyshawn's plan, in my opinion. Maybe I
Right.
read that wrong.
Nope.
But it's, I, Rome, I don't know how he keeps doing this. But this was, I don't think I've ever seen anything. The man legitimately saved himself by complete accident by mentioning that she was a decoy. Because if
Yeah.
he doesn't say that, he goes home. He set off a whole chain reaction and stopped a plan from happening that he didn't even know about. He was going to be blindsided. Like, at least if Saul would have gone home, he saw it coming.
Yeah.
Rome would have been completely blindsided, had no idea. And
But
by
the other thing is too, if Teeny had a vote, that probably still happens.
interesting, you're right. Well, let me map this out though. Genevieve vote, Rome vote, Rome
Rome
steals
steals vote.
Keyshawn's vote. That's
So
three.
yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Saul and Teeny, two. Yeah. But Teeny having a vote, maybe Genevieve doesn't have the confidence to take that shot.
Right. There's a
And
lot of variables.
so we've gone through our recap, top and bottom. Who you got?
Um, top player of the season so far that's in the safest spot, and this is hard because everyone's kind of everywhere. Sierra,
Yeah,
I
that's a
think we
good
said
one.
it before, but I mean, nothing happened that would make me question that alliance of three. Even with what we saw over there, I still think she's closer with Sam and Andy than she is with the Breadwinners Alliance. Um, the other two tribes just seem like they could both divulge into complete chaos, whereas Gata doesn't.
I think if Gato keeps winning and makes the merge as five, we could see a Reba situation.
Yeah,
Not to keep going back to 44, but Reba reached the merge as either five or as four. I think five. I think J Maya went home early. But
yeah,
the four Rebas were Drew goes home before the other three do, but they made it to like six, I think, altogether.
yeah, exactly. I could see that completely.
Let me think. Because five was D, Austin, Julie, Katura, and Jake. I think
Yeah,
Drew went home at six.
Drew
So
went home
yeah,
at 6. You're right.
God is a close enough group, and even like we saw tension last week between Annika and Sam. I think that's recoverable
Oh, yeah, no
because
question.
we saw the scene this week with Sam rapping and Annika was sitting right next to him, like laughing, encouraging him. Like that was good.
Yeah,
So we shall see. I don't mean to be boring and do the same thing as you and the same thing I did last week, but I do think Sierra's in the best position. Gata's got great team chemistry. Even if they do go to tribal, which I don't think they will, I'll make a bold-ish prediction and say that Gata does reach the merge as five.
yeah.
I think the girls want to keep her, and the two guys want to keep her. So now the bottom is interesting because I don't know what to do with Lavo at all.
I don't know what to do with Lavo either, so I'm gonna go for Kyle.
Yeah, we didn't see almost anything from him this
That's
week.
it.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything, I guess, because
It
Genevieve had
doesn't.
no confessionals week
Two
but
weeks ago.
in episode 2, and look at her being the star this week.
Yeah, it
So
doesn't mean anything. I just don't know if Kyle's in a position that he could recover from that the way that Genevieve could, because even getting no confessionals is one thing, but being on the bottom and just getting nothing. And I think that he's just that easy vote should Tuku ever have to go cast a vote.
yeah,
And kind of like what I said earlier, even if Tiana isn't completely in the main alliance, I still think she would go with it, knowing that then you're essentially one challenge win away from getting to the merge.
I'm not convinced the three wouldn't want to vote her out as a
Mm,
more strategic threat, though.
it's possible.
But I think if they do want to vote him out, she would go with it for sure. But I'm not convinced they wouldn't go for her.
Who's your bottom?
I don't want to be boring and just go with the same answers on both of them, but I feel like I have to say Kyle. Because
Mm,
I want to say Rome, but Genevieve all of a sudden stuck her flag and I'm not sending him home.
yeah,
Even though earlier in the episode said the phrase, eventually making the case for him makes a case against myself, and was willing to vote him out most of the episode, then turned all of a sudden. I just don't trust the 2 versus 2 that I think is coming to Lavo scares me away from picking anyone on that tribe to go home. Because with even numbers like that, where there's not a a remainder person to be the tiebreaker, anything can happen.
yeah,
So,
very true.
and someone could flip and make it a 3-1, and none of those four flipping would surprise me on anyone.
Yeah.
So, align blindside first boot. Who you got?
We saw one player just be a complete jerk to play other players on his tribe this week. So your choices for a line blindside first boot, from One World, Alicia Ross. From um Worlds Apart, Rodney Lavoie, and from Fiji, Rocky Reed.
Oh gosh. This
Three
reminds me of
players
the
who kind of give the Rome vibe in those seasons.
I will try to one up this on the same theme in a second because I haven't decided what my theme is going to be. I did one like this to mess with Kevin the first time we had him on. I gave him Colton, Rob Zabachnik, and I think Nayanka. Gosh, so it's Alicia,
Rodney and
Rodney, and who?
Rocky.
Who was the?
Rodney.
Oh, Rod. Oh gosh, I can't listen to him complain about doing the dishes on his birthday again. But I just can't deal with Alicia at all. So I'm going to begrudgingly align with Rocky because I just don't remember having. I remember not liking him for sure, but I don't think I have the disdain for him that I have for these other two. So I will first boot. Um, what's her name? Alicia, and blindside Rodney because I just want to see him as a juror who got blindsided. I think that's
Interesting.
entertaining.
I'm going to align with Rodney in this case. As annoying as he is, I think he's probably the one who would be the most obnoxious sitting in front of a jury. I'll blindside Alicia and first boot Rocky. I don't really want to put up with Alicia, but we've seen her go at least far in the game. Rocky was just a complete joke with Anthony, and I have the feeling he would be like that with everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. So your three are. Oh, your three are. Okay. I'll go an interesting route here. There's 4 names I want to say, but I only have 3 spots. All right, I have a way that you can, without knowing, pick the third one. You have Will Sims, Worlds Apart, who, I mean, just went off on Shireen way too far. I agreed with
Yeah,
his original reason for being annoyed. He tried to do something nice and they second guessed it. He took it way too far. He was awful to her. He's awful.
yeah.
Like a dead fish, as she described him. You have Nyanka, who I've used for. They tied it
Nice.
with under a minute left
Wow.
and an empty net. 47 seconds left and with an empty net. Okay, let's go. Sorry, I told the audience and my co-host that they would be my main focus. I'm doing a bad job of that right now. You've got Will Sims,
Well,
you've got
Sims, Nyanka.
Nyanka, and I'm gonna let you, in a way, pick your own poison on the third one here.
Okay.
Both are people that their tribe mates have not liked. Some of them have liked these people more than other tribe mates. Okay, you've got one and you've got two. Pick a number.
Let's go with numero uno.
Okay. So the two people were the two people on our show that have had Hance as their last name. They both fit this bill somehow.
Yes, they do.
I based the numbers based off of age and the order we've seen them on the show. Russell is older and came first on Survivor, meaning he gets the third spot. You've got
All
Wilson,
right.
Bianca Mixon, and Russell Hance.
Okay. That is going to be an easy ally with Russell Hance. He can't win this game, but he gets far in this game because he
I
knows how to
know.
play.
I
Um,
I
Russell's
was
coming to the end and he's gonna lose for a third time. Um, in terms of the other two, Will and Nayanka, I've gotta put Will on the jury. I don't like anything that he did in the game. At the very least, he did not tackle a handicapped person to the ground over an immunity idol clue. So they're both bad, but Nayanka's worse.
See, as soon as you picked Russell, I wished I had just said Brandon. But at the same time, like I also don't think Brandon is the same level of obnoxious and irritating
True.
and rude and just, as you put it, being a dick to his tribe mate. Is that how you phrased it?
Yeah.
To I don't think Brandon's on that same level as Russell. Dump the rice out, but spend a few days in a beach without eating and having to deal with Philip. I may or may no, I wouldn't have done the same thing, but Philip would have driven me insane. So Brandon wasn't the only one at fault there. I mean, don't get me wrong, his meltdown at Tribal Council was awful. That was on him, but Brandon was pushed to that point. And he wasn't entirely unlikable in South Pacific, so I didn't want to just go with him because I didn't feel like he was the same level of awful as the other two. But now I wish I had because putting Russell in there gave you a really easy out for who to align with. But I don't know if aligning with Russell would work because neither of us are pretty young girls, and that's who he takes to the end with him.
That's a good point.
Even the season he went out early, he was going to align with Stephanie Valencia and what's her name? The blonde
Krista.
girl that was on Zapatera.
Krista.
Krista. Wow, we've had two blonde Kristas this 22 and 7. Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Align with Russell, flip a coin on the other two. Neither one of them are lasting very long if I have anything to say about it. I'd like to think I can handle Russell. I mean, maybe, maybe not. Oh well. This was a fun episode. Check out Reality Realm Network. I mentioned Pit Stop Pals. We're 2 episodes into our second rewatch. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're caught up yet, Brett, but this rewatch is going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Um, one
Re-
of my favorite seasons, the only one that I've watched in a while. So
Rewatching season 7 of Amazing Race, and the Blues just won in overtime.
Nice.
We watched 2 periods and an overtime together, guys. So, audience, I feel closer to you guys now. You watched hockey with me. So, oh my gosh, that game. I went from really annoyed to really happy in the span of a few minutes there. So, that's what's up with Pit Stop Pals.
New Era Challenge podcast has
Um,
finally resolved our tech issues. We have put up the Michelle Fitzgerald and Devin Walker Monahan episode last week. For those of you who are fellow Taylor Swift fans, it's called Truth Dare Spin Bottle. They know how to ball, but we know math and puzzles.
nice.
Um, and we're gonna be we just recorded this week's episode, and that'll come out on Sunday.
That is exciting. Other shows are not happening soon, but we have ideas. We have plans for at least one new Reality Realm show coming. We have ideas for other shows we'd like to cover at some point. So just be watching all our socials. Keep track for any Reality Realm Network content you can, because we've got lots of fun stuff coming out.
Yeah.
And with that being said, grab your torches and head back to camp, everyone.
Good night, guys.